I want to transition to ask you about the noise-induced hearing loss seminar series that you put together every year on Audiology Online. And I don't know why we just sort of ended up in July every year.
It just sort of happened. It was just one of those things of, hey, this seems to make sense. We got some openings here. And then just once we did the first year and just thought, well, let's do it again, because that was really popular. And we had another year, and that was really popular again. So coming back again with another group of promising research that I think is clinically applicable. This year I have a couple of people lined up. Of course, I'm starting it off. I'm going to give, an overview again of some of the hot topics that's in noise-induced hearing loss in general. It's not just going to be about music-induced hearing loss, despite the fact that's the area in which I've done most of my work. So I'll start off with that overview introduction to the seminar series. I'm looking at bringing in someone who's going to be talking about otoacoustic emissions and their use in early detection of noise-induced hearing loss. I'm going to be bringing in my current fourth-year AUD extern, Frank Wardinger, to go through aspects of tinnitus management with musicians specifically, because that's an incredibly compelling area of clinical work where some of the efforts to manage tinnitus behaviorally through cognitive behavioral therapy or tinnitus retraining therapy may be especially challenging with this particular population. So Frank, as a musician himself, has a bachelor's in music prior to going into audiology, and he is very open about the fact he has tinnitus himself. And so one of the big reasons why I became an audiologist. So I'm just ecstatic about Frank jumping in. And I have a couple of ideas for what our third person is going to work on. He hasn't committed yet, so I can't say his name, but looking at the effective hearing protection devices at different sound levels. So we think of a hearing protection device as a passive device. Well, it is, except passive devices don't always behave exactly the same way under all circumstances. So, we have that good old noise reduction rating that has long since been a sort of a guide. It's not a very accurate guide, as it turns out, but it's been a bit of a guide for us to understand how much sound protection that offers a person. Well, under those laboratory circumstances in which they're tested to come up with that noise reduction rating, you get a pretty good idea for that circumstance. Well, what happens when you're using a firearm and you have an impulse noise? Well, that hearing protection device won't necessarily behave the same way for a loud impulse as it would for a continuous noise. And the science behind that is really compelling. And the way that one tests for this is incredibly interesting, especially when you get to shoot a bunch of guns to figure it out.
One thing I've always enjoyed about the Noise-Induced Hearing Loss Seminar Series, besides working with you, Dr. Fligor, is the people that you've brought on to speak have been from really an array of disciplines. So maybe they're not the people that the average audiologist has seen at an audiology convention presenting. Right. People like Dr. Doby, people like Rick Neitzel. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to participate in conference planning for the National Hearing Conservation Association, as well as a couple other noise conferences that are regional, national, international. And there's a lot of people who are involved in noise damage, biological effects of noise, the non-auditory effects of noise. Very interesting stuff. And so you have people from various backgrounds, such as Bob Doby, who's a neurotologist, Rick Neitzel, who's an industrial hygienist, which I do razz Rick that every time when I first heard about an industrial hygienist, I thought, do you clean toilets then for a living? Do you got a PhD in that? But no, it's really funny. These are the guys who are experts at doing monitoring of an area in which people work for sake of radiation exposures, vibration exposure, or noise exposure. And so hence this is Rick's area of expertise, is in noise surveys and noise assessment, especially in atypical environments like a construction area or on a fishing vessel. So very interesting stuff. We've had Chris Chesky, who's a musician, PhD music instructor, who has gotten really active and involved with his national organizations, the North American Schools of Music, for instance, in writing their guidelines for keeping music instructors from overexposing their students to high-level sound, and not by just sticking an earplug in their ear, but by considering the dynamics of the music that they are selecting for their study, for teaching their students. And teaching them how to use a noise decimeter, teaching them about sound levels, and taking a focus of trying to improve the musicality of the instruction while lessening the overall sound exposure for the students through that time. And then just having these students, these music students, develop an appreciation for protecting themselves, and then students that they will be teaching in the future. So it's been really interesting and exciting. And as you said, when you have a musician, a neurotologist, an industrial hygienist, sounds like a joke here.
Walk into a bar.
They walk into a bar.
They walk into AudiologyOnline, which is kind of like a bar.
It could, sometimes it is. You have an opportunity for some really great collaboration across disciplines.
Yeah, and I think one testament to that has been the course evaluations, which have all been outstanding across the board for every noise-induced hearing loss seminar series in the 3 years we've done it. And also last year on AudiologyOnline, I think I mentioned this to you, I'm not sure, the #1 recorded course on all of AudiologyOnline in 2010, Corey Portnoff's course in the noise-induced hearing loss seminar series.
Yep.
So,
which is just extremely gratifying, of course, because he's my PhD student.
Yep.
So, it's an exciting thing. You know, I was concerned that this whole MP3 player iPod thing iPods might cause hearing loss was a flash in the pan, and might be a little exciting, and then the next flavor of the month with popular media would come along. And we are 6 years later, and it is still exciting and interesting. And I just spoke with a reporter at USA Today this afternoon about topics around this most recent New York City study paper. So if it's something that helps to promote our profession and get us on the map, I'm happy to talk to anybody about it anytime.
Even me.
Even you.
Thanks so much,
Yep.
Brian.
Thanks for having me.